Welcome. It's the 21st century, but that doesn't mean we throw out everything from the past. At Comm Central, we believe classical education still has much to offer today's learners. By blending classical principles with Charlotte Mason's insights and our own unique design philosophy, we create an education that's both timeless and relevant. So let's explore 5 key elements of classical education that shape this framework. A 3-part progression, learning through history, integration of subjects, the importance of memory, and an emphasis on language. First, classical education follows a natural progression of learning that aligns with the child's development. K4 through 4th grade, the grammar stage. 5th through 8th grade, the logic stage. 9th through 12th grade, the rhetoric stage. Comm Central has adapted the progression as follows. K4 through 2nd grade, the grammar stage that we call echo. 3rd through 6th grade, the foundational stage that we call elements. 7th through 8th grade, the reasoning stage that we call exploration. And high school, the rhetoric stage that we call expression. In K4 through 2nd grade, children learn by imitation and they love repetition. They delight in recitation, song, and stories. They build memory and listening skills. This stage lays a foundation through experience and exposure. In 3rd through 6th grade, students begin practicing core academic skills. They learn to organize information and summarize and discuss ideas. They begin forming connections across subjects. This stage focuses on building confidence and competence. In 7th and 8th grade, students are developmentally ready for reasoning and critical thinking. They naturally begin probing deeper to understand how and why. Critical thinking is introduced more intentionally. Students are equipped with the tools for analysis and rhetoric, the art of writing and speaking effectively. In high school, students are ready to express well-reasoned ideas clearly and persuasively. They apply their learning to written and spoken communication, and they begin to form a mature, authentic voice. When we honor each student's developmental stage and take advantage of their natural inclination, we reduce frustration and maximize learning. Learning through history. Classical education teaches history in chronological cycles. Science is aligned with the progression of thought through the ages. This allows students to see connections between historical events and the development of human thought over time, bringing about better retention of the material and opportunities for teaching empathy and critical thinking. Each historical cycle builds on the last, adding depth as students mature. It is common in classical education to study history chronologically over 4 years, incorporating American history into year 3 and 4. At Comm Central, we study world history chronologically over 3 years with a separate year that strictly focuses on American history so we can take a deep dive into our culture and heritage. This method greatly reduces stress for homeschooling families. It allows for family discussions around common themes because all students, K4 through 8th grade, are studying the same subject matter. Integration of subjects. Next, classical education integrates subjects by weaving them together with history as the organizing outline. This allows students to make connections across disciplines and develop a deeper understanding, bringing about greater retention of the information. Let's walk through a real-life example from a unit on ancient Egypt. For cultural studies, students use a blackline map to label Egypt and create a map key. They understand how geography impacted Egyptian way of life and observe the art and architecture of ancient Egypt. For literature, students listen to a read aloud of The Golden Goblet, a historical fiction book set in ancient Egypt. For composition, students write a report about Cheops, the pharaoh who ordered the building of the Great Pyramid at Giza. Christian worldview is incorporated into all classes, not just tacked on as a separate study. Students analyze the historical fiction read aloud and their history lessons through the lens of God's Word. The 4th facet of classical education is the importance of memory work. Memory work is foundational in classical education. In early grades, it leverages children's love for rhythm, rhyme, and repetition. It builds communication skills and also gives students knowledge that allows for deeper learning in later years. As you can see, memory work at Comm Central is practiced heavily in the early years when students are in that echo stage. Emphasis on language. Classical education places an emphasis on language for good reason. As you can see, our curriculum emphasizes oral communication skills across all grades in a manner that's easy to accomplish and practice regularly, even for the student not excited about public speaking. listening to read-alouds. Narration, that's having your student retell what they understood from their read-aloud or independent reading in their own words. We've already talked about memorization and recitation, fun skills for students to practice when they are young and pay great dividends later. Then finally, there's sometimes the dreaded actual oral communication or public speaking. This doesn't have to be painful. Parents, I know you've probably had a conversation with your child that goes something like this. You ask, "How was your day?" And they start at the end, jump to the beginning, they add random details, and suddenly you're completely lost. Or maybe your child shares every tiny detail without ever getting to the point, or says almost nothing at all, just "it was fine" or "not much." All of these are signs that students need help learning how to organize and express their thoughts, a key part of developing critical thinking and communication skills. That's why at Comm Central we intentionally give students regular practice with simple, low-pressure speaking opportunities like "tell me about yourself," a how-to speech, or a short personal narrative. These aren't complicated or heavily scripted. Students simply practice sharing what they already know, clearly, confidently, and in order. Another common situation. So your student is asked a question by a friend or an adult, something you know they know, but they freeze. Or maybe the question requires them to think on their feet and they just don't know what to say. We help prepare students for those moments too, with fun and practical exercises like mock interviews and improv games, where they learn to respond thoughtfully, speak up with confidence, and practice being articulate under pressure. So back to our list. Latin is an important language skill. However, we've learned over the years that a highly successful approach to studying Latin is to actually cover multiple level 1 texts over several years. If you continually progress your student to the next level, they begin traipsing through the weeds of complexity fairly quickly. We want them to enjoy the study, so we want to keep things at their level of learning and not progress too deeply until about 7th grade, when they're naturally ready to decide if they want to go further or not. The beautiful thing about using different curricula is that each one employs a different method of instruction. For example, some texts begin by teaching nouns and others begin by teaching verbs, allowing students to master different concepts each year. In addition, the vocabulary emphasized in each level 1 text is different. Some books focus on classroom terminology, others on ancient Rome or even Julius Caesar's wars. This is an amazing opportunity to improve your students' vocabulary by focusing on Latin root words and English derivatives. So to recap, the role of Latin. It should be paced at the student's developmental level. It improves English vocabulary. It strengthens grammar skills. It builds foundations for future language learning. The last of the communication skills is composition. Yes, I know, AI can do this one for us, but not perfectly, and it is never going to replace the authenticity of the human voice. On top of that, composition is an excellent way to practice critical thinking. The composition program we utilize doesn't expect students to write original content at an early age, but actually respects their level of learning at that age and teaches them first through mimicking the masters. As students progress, they learn organizational skills and then how to add their own artistic flair. Then, in 7th and 8th grade, when students are developmentally ready, we shift the focus to writing original content and analytical and persuasive writing. We've seen how classical education lays a solid foundation. It brings families together, respects a child's development, and equips students with essential skills. But our blended philosophy doesn't end there. In the next video, we'll explore how Charlotte Mason's timeless wisdom complements these classical elements. See you there. Reach out if you have any questions. We'd love to hear from you.